Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you the different types of bullet journals that I currently use and give you some ideas for some that you might want to use. So let's get started. I'm going to use this bullet journal as an example of what you do when you first open up a brand new bullet journal. You want to go to the first clean page, and this is typically what I like to do, and that is actually set up a grid spacing chart. So once you get your bullet journal nice and spread open and laying flat, you want to go ahead and grab a few tools that you're going to need to build your grid spacing chart. First, of course, you're going to need a nice pencil, and then you're going to need some sort of archival ink pen. You'll also need an eraser, a ruler, and some sort of highlighter. So the first thing you want to do is number your boxes going across, and I like to number the boxes rather than the dots because they're easier to put the number in, and it's also easier to count. And then from there, you're going to number your boxes going down. I typically move over to about the fourth number to work my way down. That way you get a nice grid going. After that, you want to identify your halfway points going down and going across. Then you want to identify the half, third, and fourth going across and down. Take note that sometimes it's not always going to be a nice even number. And then identify your page by putting a nice label on it. Another layout I saw from another crafter was to put down the commonly used layouts that you typically would use in your bullet journal, and this would be to just identify the different spaces when making your spreads, and it makes it a little convenient for you. Here's the completed common layouts and grid spacing sheets, and you can get creative with this page by adding some washi tape, different colors, whatever you like to do. Next, I like to do a pen test just to make sure that most of the different pens I use in my bullet journal are going to work with my bullet journal, or I can identify which pens to avoid. Some bullet journals already come with a test page. Now, to make some quick corrections, you can use some correction tape or a Uniball Signal white broadline pen. The first bullet journal I'm going to show you guys is what I would like to call a coach's bullet journal. This bullet journal is a little bit different because it's very minimalistic and it's just something that you can quickly grab and go. This is something that you don't want to spend too much time having to create layouts and things like that, and a lot of the layouts will be pretty much done ahead of time. What I like to do first is create this first layout, which is a team roster. This is where you would list all of your team members for that year, and you can include some other information. Like some of the information I put here is their name, their position, rank, class, birth date, things like that. That just gives me some like very quick information. And then you can list out your practice attendance key. Here you want to list out the dates that you have practiced, so that way you can kind of keep track of when your teammates are at practice and when they're missing practice, when they leave early or come in late, things like that. You want to make sure that you have documented information, because a lot of times you're going to be dealing with parents, and sometimes parents want to know what's going on and why is their child not performing or things like that, and at least you would have something documented that you can actually show them. Another spread that I like to do in a coach's bullet journal is a performance attendance. So this is a little bit different than the practice attendance. Obviously, all performances are mandatory for most teams, but sometimes we have that performer that doesn't like to show up or likes to show up late. This spread is what I like to call my PT schedule. This is basically a schedule of different exercises that we do during practice times to maintain health and physical fitness, and it's almost like a habit tracker, but basically what I do here is I create a calendar grid, and then I list the different workouts and then just highlight the workouts or put dates in the workouts when we do it. Now, this practice schedule that I'm doing here is actually a rundown of how practice will typically go, from the start of practice, the middle of practice, the ending of practice, and then what is expected for each member when they are at home, like what type of practice they need to do at home. And here's an example of what I like to do in some of my practice schedules. Next is the skills check spread. This is a spread I like to do to kind of check off when my individual members are able to do a certain type of skill, and then I also like to monitor when the entire squad is able to do a certain type of skill. So it's almost like a habit tracker on one side to measure when the squad does a certain type of skill all together, and then the other side is when the individual is able to do the skill. So on the left side you see I'm doing the calendar grid, and then in the blank space above I'll put the skill and I will number that skill, and then on the right side I will list my members' names and I have the skills numbered going across, and I will just check off when that member is able to check off that skill. And as you can see, I made a little mistake there, so I had to grab the trusty old correction tape. And you'll also notice that I use a stencil because sometimes it's just easier. Up next is my main bullet journal that I will actually use every day. This is a larger size bullet journal. And in this bullet journal, I like to start off with a Calendex after I do my grid spacing, because I not only want to keep track of future dates and information, but I also want to keep track of where exactly I have my different collections. And rather than doing just a big index, I'd rather actually list what page those collections are on and actually list what date I put them in. I started to use some washi tape for the dates, however the washi tape didn't line up with the squares, so I ended up just handwriting this. Now I can tell you this is very tedious, and if you make a mistake it's very aggravating to have to turn around and fix. So it's always good to just have an actual calendar right next to you, either with your phone or something, that way you can list this out. And as you can see, I also divide up the different weeks. And then I color in the spaces at the bottom for days that are not in that month. And for this Bujo, I decided to just keep it kind of minimalistic. I'm not using a lot of colors. I'm not using a lot of decorations or anything like that. I probably will add some of that later on, but for the most part I didn't do that. And here I'm doing an at a glance calendar. Now, as I said before, it is a pain to have to write a bunch of different dates. However, it is convenient to have this type of calendar in your bullet journal if you're not going to do a full future log. You can also print out this information and just stick it in your bullet journal if you don't want to write all of those dates. And if you notice on the top of my Calendex, I also did a zodiac birthday. So now we're going to go on to my first month in this new bullet journal, which is going to be June. And this is my dashboard, and then we move on to some of the spreads, and this is actually in hyperspeed because I will come back and explain a lot of these in the flip through. So the first part of the June spread is basically my at a glance look at the month. This is where I have my monthly reflection, priority task, added tasks, and you see here where I'm talking about my habit tracker. What I like to do is I track my habits per week, but in the monthly dashboard I like to actually put planned habits. And what I'll do is I'll plan some habits that I want to do and try for that week, and then I will actually track them in that week and see which ones I actually kept up with, and then I'll revisit and figure out, do I want to keep these habits or do I want to change, because I am still kind of working out what habits I want to actually track and keep. Up next, we're going to do my self-care journal. And this one I decided to use some of my inks just to give it a more calming effect and to add a little vibrancy to it, but also to kind of keep it a little bit minimalistic. I didn't want to go too wild with the decorations in this one. I wanted to kind of keep it calm with some neutral tones and colors. So this first spread you see me working on is my self-care spread, where I kind of list some different things dealing with mind, body, heart, and soul. And then I also have 15 ways to calm myself down in case I'm feeling stressed. And that was actually derived from an article. And then here I am working on my inspirational quote spread. So anytime I run across any type of inspirational quote, I want to put it there. And next, I'm working on my brain dump. So anytime I just have something on my mind that I really don't want to put in any collections in my other journals, I want to put it there. As you see, I am using some stamps here to kind of spruce up some of the pages, but still keep it kind of minimal. And then I do a things I learned spread. So you see one of my stamps actually bled through, so I went ahead and colored it in. And up next we have what I would consider a teacher's bullet journal. Now, this I'm kind of making ahead of time. However, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to be using this in the future, given the current circumstances. First, I set up a teacher dashboard, and this is where I will list different things that come up that I want to make sure that I either don't forget or that I have time for. And what I'm actually going to do with this is put some self-adhesive laminating sheets on top of these pages so that I can actually stick post-it notes on or use a wet erase marker to actually draw on. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up the first month spread and put down my goals for the month, must-dos, and celebrations. Then you're going to actually see me leave several pages for the rest of the months of the calendar year. Now, eventually what I'll do is go ahead and pre-make these months. Now, this is something I don't normally do in a bullet journal. However, in the teaching bullet journal, I will do that because I want to go ahead and have a space for me to map out my year. And here I have my weekly overview. And my weekly overview is a little bit different. On one side, I kind of have a dashboard setup going on, but then on the other side, I have my scheduled tasks on the left, but I'm also using the Alistair method to kind of just list out a to-do list and then check off when I complete those tasks. And lastly, we have the brain dump and a section for notes during cluster meetings and staff meetings. I hope you enjoyed a look at some of the bullet journal ideas that I have, and maybe you gained some inspiration from it. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button.